It's strange, isn't it? How a single moment can fracture everything you thought was solid. Have you ever felt that? Like the ground beneath your feet just gives way? For me, it was under the glare of 1,000 spotlights, with the weight of 3 years of my life about to be unveiled. My name is David Sterling, and this is the story of how I poured my heart, my experience, and a significant chunk of my own hidden fortune into building a dream, only to be publicly cast aside like an outdated piece of hardware. But it's also the story of what happens next. When the person they underestimated holds all the cards they never knew existed. It started 5 years before that disastrous conference. I just sold my first tech startup, sold it for enough money that, honestly, I never needed to work another day in my life. I was 46 then. Some folks might have bought a yacht, traveled the world, and I did some of that, sure. But the thrill, the buzz of creation, of building something new, something revolutionary, it's in my blood. I couldn't just stop. So I pivoted, became an angel investor, but quietly, anonymously. I set up a few holding companies, names like Apex Holdings, Summit Ventures, the Sterling Family Trust. Just legal structures, really, designed to let me fund promising ideas without my name being attached. I didn't need the spotlight. I just craved the challenge, the process of bringing innovation to life. That's how I met Ethan Cole. He was young, maybe late 20s back then, brimming with energy at a tech incubator event. He had this kernel of an idea for an AI platform. Brilliant, truly groundbreaking, but raw, unrefined. He had the vision, the charisma, but zero capital and honestly not quite the technical depth to pull it off alone. He needed funding, badly, and he needed someone who understood the guts of the technology, the architecture, the code. I saw the potential immediately, not just in the idea, but in the synergy we could have. I could have just written a check through one of my anonymous firms, but where's the fun in that? I wanted my hands dirty. I wanted to build it. So I made him an offer. I told him I knew some investment groups, my investment groups, though he didn't know that, who might be interested in funding his concept. And as part of the deal, I'd come on board as Chief Technology Officer. I'd help secure the funding and lead the technical development. He jumped at it. Eager, maybe a little naive, he never dug too deep into who these investor connections were. We signed the papers. My shell companies through Apex Holdings secured a controlling interest, 51%, in the new venture we called Innovate AI. But I insisted on a clause, buried deep in the legal jargon, that prevented him from easily connecting these investment entities back to me personally. I wanted our working relationship to feel like a partnership, equals striving for the same goal. I didn't want him looking at me like I was his benefactor, his boss in disguise. And for 3 years, it worked beautifully. We were a great team, or so I thought. He was the face, the charismatic CEO, securing deals and charming the press. I was the engine, deep in the code, architecting the platform, leading the engineering team. We hired brilliant people, worked insane hours, fueled by coffee and the shared dream of changing the world with our AI. I poured everything I had into it, not just my technical expertise, built over decades, but my passion. Innovate AI wasn't just a job, it was my creation, the next chapter after my first success. We were building something truly special. But somewhere along the way, Ethan started believing his own hype. The positive press, the rising valuation, it went to his head. He started talking less about our vision and more about his legacy. And subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to shift. I started noticing the whispers that would stop when I walked into a room. The hushed conversations between Ethan and Aiden Hayes, a sharp, ambitious 29-year-old whiz kid we'd hired about 8 months prior. Meetings I should have been in, suddenly happening without me. I chalked it up to the stress of nearing launch. Maybe Ethan wanting to shield me from some of the day-to-day noise so I could focus on the tech. How wrong I was. He decided, apparently, that having a CTO in his early 50s, someone with gray at the temples, someone who remembered dial-up modems, didn't fit the young, dynamic image he wanted Innovate AI to project. Experience, it seemed, was suddenly a liability. Which brings us back to that stage. The annual Tech Vision Conference, our big moment. The culmination of 3 years of relentless work. The air crackled with anticipation. Hundreds of faces, reporters, investors, potential clients, peers, all looking up, waiting. My hands were steady as I stood slightly behind the podium, ready to dive into the technical details after Ethan's opening remarks. My heart, though, it was doing a drum solo against my ribs. Not from nerves about the tech, I knew it was solid, revolutionary even, but from the sheer excitement of the launch. Ethan stepped up to the microphone. That practiced, charming smile was firmly in place, but something was off. It didn't reach his eyes. There was a coldness there I hadn't seen before, or maybe hadn't wanted to see. Before we unveil our breakthrough product, he began, his voice echoing through the silent hall, amplified and somehow intimate despite the crowd. I need to make an important announcement. My brow furrowed slightly. An announcement? Now? This wasn't rehearsed. Effective immediately, Ethan continued, his gaze sweeping across the audience, but somehow avoiding mine. Dr. David Sterling will no longer be serving as Chief Technology Officer of Innovate AI. The words hit me like a physical blow. A wave of heat rushed to my face. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a low murmur spreading like wildfire. Hundreds of pairs of eyes swiveled towards me, burning under the stage lights. I felt naked, exposed. Ethan didn't pause. In today's fast-moving tech world, he went on, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed. We need fresh perspectives. Dr. Sterling has made significant contributions, of course, but frankly, his methods, they're becoming outdated. At 51, it's just difficult to keep pace with the truly cutting-edge innovations required to lead. Outdated? Too old? The room started to blur. Did he really just say that? On stage? In front of everyone? My mind raced, trying to process the sheer audacity, the public humiliation. He was firing me, not in his office, not even with an HR representative present, but here, now, as a prelude to launching the very product I had bled for. Somehow, years of maintaining composure in high-stakes meetings kicked in. I forced myself to stand tall, to keep my expression neutral, even managed a slight polite nod as if this were somehow normal. A prearranged transition. Inside, though, I was reeling. It felt like a betrayal layered on top of an insult, wrapped in public disgrace. As I turned to walk off the stage, wanting nothing more than to disappear, Ethan's voice followed me, booming and cheerful now. But don't worry. We are thrilled to welcome our new Chief Technology Officer, Aiden Hayes. The crowd, caught off guard but programmed to respond to enthusiasm, erupted in applause. Applause for my replacement, the 29-year-old who had been whispering with Ethan. Applause while I slipped into the shadows backstage, my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. The sound felt like stones hitting glass. Waiting for me in the dimness weren't congratulations or commiserations, but two uniformed security guards. They had surprisingly apologetic eyes, which somehow made it worse. "Mr. Sterling, we need to escort you," one said softly. They walked me through the backstage corridors, a silent, surreal procession. We arrived at my office, or what had been my office just hours ago. The nameplate was already gone. In its place, crisp and new, Aiden Hayes, CTO. They hadn't even waited for me to be officially gone. "We'll need your badge and company laptop, sir," the other guard murmured, clearly uncomfortable. I handed them over without a word. What was there to say? Arguing felt pointless beneath me. My personal belongings, 3 years of my professional life, were already packed into a single, sad-looking cardboard box sitting by the door. A favorite coffee mug, a few photos of my family, some technical books, a couple of industry awards. That was it, reduced to trinkets in a box. As they walked me through the main office area towards the exit, I saw faces peeking out from cubicles, from behind monitors. Some of my former colleagues, people I'd mentored, people I'd worked alongside late into the night. Many quickly looked away, pretending to be busy. A few held my gaze, their expressions shocked, maybe even sympathetic. But nobody said anything. Nobody spoke up. The silence was deafening. Finally, outside, blinking in the afternoon sun, they escorted me to my car. The guards mumbled another quiet apology and left me standing there, box in hand, the muffled sounds of the ongoing conference still audible from the main building. Driving home felt like moving through water. The city blurred past. The humiliation burned hotter than the initial shock. It wasn't just the firing, it was the way it was done, the calculated cruelty of it, the ageism, so blatant, so unapologetic. I had known something was off in the preceding weeks, the subtle shifts, the exclusion. But this, a public execution based on my age, It was a depth of ruthlessness I hadn't anticipated, even from Ethan. Back in the quiet sanctuary of my house, I poured myself a generous glass of scotch, neat, stared at the wall, the scene replaying in my mind. Ethan's smug face, the turning heads, the applause for Aiden. The betrayal felt sharp, personal. We had built this together. I had trusted him. Then a different thought began to surface, cutting through the anger and hurt, a slow-burning ember of resolve. Ethan, in his arrogance, in his rush to consolidate power and project his youthful image, had forgotten something critical. I walked over to my home safe, spun the dial, and opened the heavy door. Inside, beneath some personal papers, was a worn leather portfolio. I pulled it out, carried it back to my desk. Inside were the original incorporation documents for Innovate AI. My fingers, steady now, traced the dense legal text until they found it. Page 17, a specific provision, nestled within paragraphs of standard jargon. The clause detailing the ownership structure, the controlling interest held by Apex Holdings and its associated trusts. My trusts. A thin, cold smile touched my lips for the first time since stepping onto that stage. Ethan Cole thought he had seized control of Innovate AI. He thought he had cleared the way for his vision, unburdened by my outdated methods. He had absolutely no idea who he had just pushed out the door. He had no idea who actually held the purse strings, who had quietly funded his entire dream from the very beginning. He thought he'd won. He hadn't even realized the game had just begun. The next morning, the headlines were brutal. Innovate AI dumps CTO Sterling, cites need for fresh perspectives amid age concerns. Ageism allegations rock tech darling after public firing. My phone blew up. Calls and texts from former colleagues offering condolences, mostly whispered. Friends expressing outrage. Reporters sniffing for a comment, a confirmation of the age discrimination angle. I ignored them all. Silence, for now, was my strategy. I watched the Innovate AI stock ticker online. It took a small dip, maybe 5%, then stabilized. Of course it stabilized. The product, my product, the one they were launching, was fundamentally brilliant. Its potential was undeniable, even with Ethan at the helm and Aiden scrambling to understand the complexities I'd woven into its core. My absence hadn't broken it. Yet. My lawyer, Grace Miller, arrived at my house later that morning, carrying thick folders brimming with documents. Grace is sharp, meticulous, and fiercely loyal. We'd worked together on the sale of my first company. "This is textbook age discrimination, David," she said, spreading papers across my large kitchen island. Her tone was crisp, indignant on my behalf. Blatant. Public. "We can file suit by tomorrow morning. The EEOC complaint is practically written already. We can go for damages, reinstatement." I held up a hand, cutting her off gently. "Not yet, Grace. Hold off on the lawsuit for now." She looked surprised. "David, he publicly humiliated you based on your age. This is a slam dunk case. Why wait? Because a lawsuit gets me money, Grace," I replied, turning to my personal laptop and booting it up. "And maybe a public apology eventually. I want something more valuable." "What's that?" she asked, leaning forward. I logged into a secure cloud drive, navigating to the meticulously organized archives I'd kept. Every email, every contract, every significant code commit related to Innovate AI. "Justice," I said simply, pulling up a specific email thread from the executive communications over the past 3 months. "And control." I pointed to the screen. "Look at this, an email chain between Ethan and Aiden. Subject transition planning." I read a line aloud. "Once we move David out, we can finally implement those back-end changes we discussed. His old-school approach to data handling is holding us back from real monetization potential." Grace read over my shoulder, her expression hardening. "Wow, this is gold. Premeditated. And what back-end changes are they talking about?" "Based on later messages," I said. Scrolling down, it looks like they were planning to modify the AI's core functions to collect user data far more aggressively than our privacy policy allowed. Skirting consent, maybe even breaking it. "Okay, this is even better," Grace breathed. "Privacy violations on top of age discrimination. This could be huge. But David, why are you still hesitating on the legal action?" I closed the laptop lid softly. "Because Ethan thinks he just got rid of an employee. He doesn't realize he just alienated the majority owner. A lawsuit makes this public now, potentially tanks the company before I can step back in. I don't want to destroy Innovate AI, Grace. I poured 3 years of my life into it. I want to save it. Save it from him." Grace studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, David, play the long game. What's your first move? My first move wasn't legal. It was strategic. While Ethan and Aiden were likely basking in the glow of the product launch, despite the PR hiccup of my firing, I reached out to 5 senior engineers at Innovate AI. People I trusted, people I knew had privately expressed concerns about Aiden's lack of deep experience and Ethan's increasingly arrogant leadership style. People who, crucially, were also over 40. We met discreetly at a quiet coffee shop miles away from the tech campus buzz. The atmosphere was tense at first, cautious. They offered condolences, expressed shock at how I was treated. Look, I said, getting straight to the point after the initial pleasantries. You all know the core AI engine, the neural network architecture. It's mine, built from the ground up. Ben Carter, the lead database architect, a brilliant guy in his late 40s, nodded grimly. Everyone knows that, David. Aiden's just putting a flashy new coat of paint on your masterpiece. He barely understands the underlying structure. Has he tried to make significant changes to the core algorithm yet? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Maria Sanchez, our sharp-as-hack security specialist, let out a short, humorless laugh. Oh, he tried, last week, tinkered with the predictive modeling module. Broke the whole damn system for 6 hours. They had to roll back to your last stable version. A small spark of satisfaction ignited within me. Just as I suspected. Aiden was skilled, but he didn't have the foundational knowledge. Okay, I said, leaning in slightly. I need your eyes and ears inside. Nothing confidential, nothing that crosses ethical lines. Just public information I might miss from the outside. System performance chatter, widespread bug reports, client feedback trends. They exchanged glances. Loyalty is a complex thing in the tech world, especially when jobs are on the line. Finally, Ben spoke, his voice low. Honestly, David, most of us senior folks are polishing our resumes anyway. The vibe has changed since, well, you know. What do you need specifically? This was my chance. I left let's call it a structural integrity monitor, deep in the system architecture, I explained carefully. Section 12 of the core processing code. It's not malicious, not a backdoor in the traditional sense, more like a complex dependency. If they try to significantly modify or optimize that specific section without understanding its intricate connections to everything else, I paused, letting the implication hang in the air. It'll cause cascading failures? Maria guessed, her eyes widening slightly. Subtle ones at first, I confirmed. Performance degradation, data synchronization errors, inexplicable glitches. Nothing catastrophic immediately, but frustrating. Hard to pin down if you don't know the architecture intimately. I need to know when they start hitting that wall. When they start messing with Section 12. They agreed. Before we parted ways, Maria slipped a small, unmarked flash drive across the table towards me. Internal leadership team comms, she murmured, avoiding eye contact. Slack channel archives. Thought you might find them interesting. I raised an eyebrow. How did you manage this, Maria? She gave a slight shrug. Let's just say their internal password security protocols are about as outdated as Ethan seems to think you are. Back home, the flash drive proved to be even more valuable than the emails I already had. It contained months of conversations. Clear evidence that Ethan had been planning my ouster for a long time, feeding concerns about my age to board members, grooming Aiden as my replacement. Even worse, there were explicit discussions about weakening data privacy safeguards post-launch to boost ad revenue metrics, directly contradicting the user agreements I had helped draft. This wasn't just unethical, it was potentially illegal. Armed with this, I arranged another discreet meeting, this time with Robert Chen, a respected venture capitalist and one of Innovate AI's original angel investors, one of the few external investors whose money came in alongside my hidden majority stake. We met at his secluded lake house, far from the prying eyes and listening ears of Silicon Valley. I laid it all out for him, the public firing, the ageism, the evidence of planned privacy violations, and finally, the ace up my sleeve. Wait, Robert said, leaning back in his chair, looking genuinely stunned. You're telling me you control the majority of Innovate AI's stock through Apex Holdings and those other entities? 51%, I confirmed, sliding a summary document across the table. Carefully distributed across several trusts and holding companies to avoid triggering mandatory disclosure thresholds back when we set it up. Ethan never knew they all led back to me. Robert let out a long, low whistle. So you could literally call an emergency shareholder meeting right now and vote him out? I could, I agreed, but that feels abrupt and potentially damaging to the company's stability in the short term. There's a cleaner way, a more definitive way. I showed him the messages detailing the planned privacy violations. His face darkened as he read. Good Lord, if this gets out, it could destroy the company's reputation. Tank the valuation completely. Exactly, I said. And that's why we need to handle this carefully, Robert. I don't want to burn Innovate AI to the ground. I want to save it, restructure it, and frankly, I need allies like you on the board when the time comes. Robert studied me, his sharp investor eyes assessing the situation. What's your plan, David? First, I said, my voice steady. I'm starting a new company, effective immediately. What's it called? He asked, intrigued. Keystone Analytics, I replied, because experience isn't outdated, it's the foundation. I paused. And Robert, I'd be honored if you'd consider being one of our first seed investors. He smiled slowly. Consider it done, David. Now tell me about Phase 2. Phase 2 involved renting a modest office space in a different part of the city and making quiet phone calls. Within 2 weeks, I had 10 former Innovate AI employees signed on to join Keystone Analytics. Every single person I hired had two things in common. They were exceptionally talented, and they were all over 40. Engineers, designers, data scientists who had felt undervalued or sidelined under Ethan's regime. There was an energy in that small office, a sense of purpose, of second chances. We weren't just building a competitor, we were building a statement. Meanwhile, reports trickled in from Ben and Maria at Innovate AI. Trouble was brewing. Customer complaints were surging, system glitches, slow processing times, data inconsistencies. Exactly the kind of cascading failures I'd anticipated when they inevitably tried to mess with Section 12. Aiden Hayes was reportedly floundering, blaming the legacy code, my code, and the maintenance teams. Ethan was apparently becoming increasingly volatile, demanding fixes that his new CTO couldn't deliver. Ben sent me a text one evening. Aiden's blaming the server team now, says they don't understand his advanced architecture. LOL. Everyone knows he's the one who broke the core sync function trying to optimize S12. I felt a pang of guilt for the customers experiencing the disruptions, but I reminded myself this was a necessary temporary phase. The system wasn't fundamentally compromised in a dangerous way. It was just becoming unreliable, frustratingly buggy, thanks to their meddling. Then an unexpected call came through one evening. It was Laura Finch, Innovate AI's head of HR. She had always been professional and fair in my dealings with her. Her voice sounded tight, strained. David, it's Laura Finch. We need to talk. Laura, I replied neutrally, bracing myself. Things are falling apart here, David, she said, the stress evident. The platform is unstable. Clients are complaining loudly. Ethan is making rash decisions under pressure, and honestly, Aiden is completely in over his head. That sounds difficult, I responded, keeping my voice even. There was a pause. David, I know what happened to you, how it happened. It was wrong, she continued, her voice dropping slightly. Deeply wrong. But the company is suffering. The teams are demoralized. Would you consider consulting, just short term, to help stabilize things, fix the immediate problems? I allowed myself a small internal smile, the first sign of desperation from within the fortress. Laura, I appreciate the call, I really do. But I'm afraid I've already started a new venture. Keystone Analytics. We're quite busy. I paused, letting it sink in. But please, do send my best regards to Ethan. The click as she hung up was satisfyingly final. Keystone Analytics' office was humming. We weren't just rebuilding something similar to Innovate AI, we were improving on it, learning from the flaws, prioritizing the things Ethan had wanted to compromise. The user interface needs to be more intuitive, more accessible. I told our small design team gathered around a whiteboard, and privacy can't be an afterthought. It has to be baked into the architecture from level 0. There was a palpable sense of collaboration, of mutual respect. No rockstar egos, just experienced professionals working together. All the while, I kept a close watch on Innovate AI's public performance. Their stock had slid further, down 15% since the launch, as whispers about technical instability grew louder in the business press. Grace, my lawyer, had quietly filed the initial age discrimination complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, not pursuing a lawsuit yet, just establishing an official record, applying pressure subtly. Then a text message arrived from Maria late one afternoon. Alert, they're planning a major patch push tonight. Supposedly fixes all the stability issues. Ethan announced it in an all-hands. Aiden looked terrified. I knew they hadn't fixed it. They couldn't have. The interconnectedness I'd built into Section 12 wasn't a simple bug you could patch. It was fundamental to the system's logic flow. Any significant change without a complete architectural understanding would trigger deeper, more complex failures. They were about to pour gasoline on the fire. That night, I sat at my home office workstation, monitoring Innovate AI's public server status dashboards and network performance trackers. Right on schedule, around 2 a.m., the status lights began blinking yellow, then red. Customer-facing dashboards started timing out. Data processing queues ground to a halt across their network. They hadn't fixed it, they'd broken it worse. By morning, the tech forums were exploding. Innovate AI's support lines were completely overwhelmed. Ethan issued a hurried press statement blaming unexpected integration issues with legacy code components. A thinly veiled attempt to blame me again, without actually naming me. I calmly forwarded the press statement link to Grace with a simple note. Add this to the file. The trap was slowly, inexorably closing. Patience was key. 2 weeks after the disastrous patch attempt, the first major domino fell. Global Finance Group, Innovate AI's largest and most prestigious client, publicly announced they were putting their multi-million-dollar contract under review due to ongoing service instability and data integrity concerns. Innovate AI's stock plunged another 20% on the news. Panic, according to my sources inside, gripped the executive suite. Ethan was reportedly shouting at developers, demanding impossible fixes. Aiden was drowning, utterly lost in the complex system I had architected. That afternoon, an email landed in my personal inbox. The sender, Ethan Cole. Subject, we need to talk. I read his message with a kind of detached amusement. There was no apology, no hint of remorse, just pure, unadulterated desperation, barely masked by corporate jargon. He talked about synergies, about addressing certain technical challenges, and proposed bringing me back on as a high-paid consultant. I let the email sit unanswered for 6 hours, let him stew in the mess he'd created. Then I typed a brief reply. Ethan, thank you for reaching out. However, I am fully committed to my new venture, Keystone Analytics. Perhaps you could try hiring someone younger, someone with those fresh perspectives you value. Best regards, David Sterling. His reply came back almost instantly. 3 words, name your price. I smiled faintly and closed my laptop without responding. He still didn't get it. Money wasn't the point. It had never been the point. The very next day, I approved Keystone Analytics' first official press release. We didn't mention Innovate AI directly, of course. We simply announced our formation, our mission to deliver robust, ethical AI solutions, and highlighted our leadership team, emphasizing our over 200 combined years of deep industry experience in AI development and deployment. The industry publications picked it up immediately. Several articles noted, with barely concealed subtext, that Keystone Analytics seemed to be staffed largely by highly respected senior talent recently departed from Innovate AI. By the end of that day, 3 more resumes from current Innovate AI employees landed in my inbox. The exodus was beginning. About a month after my firing, maybe 6 weeks total, I received a confidential tip from my ally on the board, Robert Chen. Innovate AI's board had called an emergency, closed-door meeting. Robert forwarded me the agenda. Item number 1, leadership performance and strategic concerns. Perfect. It was time. I activated the next phase. Through my various holding companies, Apex Holdings, Summit Ventures, the Sterling Family Trust, I instructed my brokers to begin quietly, strategically buying up Innovate AI stock on the open market. The price was depressed due to the ongoing technical failures and the Global Finance Group news. With each carefully executed transaction, I consolidated my hidden majority position, pushing my ownership percentage higher while remaining anonymous behind the corporate veils. Simultaneously, Keystone Analytics announced our first product, an advanced AI system specifically designed for financial analysis. It directly addressed the stability, performance, and data privacy pain points that Innovate AI clients, particularly Global Finance Group, had been complaining about. We launched a limited beta program, inviting select companies, including Global Finance Group, to try our platform free of charge for 90 days. By noon the day of our beta launch, Global Finance Group had signed up. Ethan must have heard about it almost immediately. My phone rang that evening, his number flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The message he left was a fascinating blend of bluster, threats, and barely concealed pleading. "David, you can't just poach our clients. This is unethical. I know what you're doing, trying to sabotage me. Call me back. We need to sort this out. Please, David, call me." I deleted the voicemail without listening to the whole thing. Instead, I authorized Grace and my legal team to finalize the paperwork required for my holding companies as majority shareholders to formally call for a special shareholder meeting. The official agenda item, a vote on the removal and replacement of Innovate AI's current chief executive officer. When I finally went to bed that night, sleep came easier than it had in weeks. I dreamed I was back on that conference stage, under the bright lights. But this time, I was the one stepping up to the microphone. The special shareholder meeting was scheduled for Friday, just 3 days away. Grace and her team worked around the clock, preparing exhaustive documentation, detailed timelines of Ethan's mismanagement, the failed product launch fallout, the stock price collapse, the client defections. Crucially, we had the printouts of the internal communications proving his discriminatory intent regarding my age and the reckless plans for privacy violations. "You control the vote with your shares alone, David," Grace confirmed, reviewing our final strategy document in my temporary Keystone office. 51% is insurmountable if you vote against him. But having board support will make the transition smoother. We should be prepared for Ethan to fight dirty, though. Accusations, legal threats, hell fight, I agreed, leaning back in my chair. But he still doesn't know who he's really fighting. Not yet. On Wednesday afternoon, 2 days before the meeting, an investigative tech blog published a bombshell article. "Innovate AI's privacy problem. Is your data being harvested?" The piece meticulously detailed how the company's AI platform appeared to be collecting user information well beyond the scope of its stated privacy policy, citing anonymous internal sources. It was exactly what Maria's flash drive had revealed. I hadn't leaked it. I didn't need to. When a company's culture turns toxic, when leadership acts recklessly, secrets rarely stay contained for long. The article sent fresh shockwaves through the industry, and likely through Innovate AI's remaining clients. That evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was Aidan Hayes, my replacement. His voice was strained, thin. "Dr. Sterling? David? It's Aidan." "Aidan," I replied coolly. "I just wanted to say, I didn't know about the full plan," he stammered, words tumbling out. "To remove you like that. Ethan just told me the CTO position was opening up because you were considering retirement. He made it sound like a natural transition." I remained silent, letting the awkwardness hang in the air, letting him squirm. "The system," he continued, his voice tight with desperation. "It's unstable. Deeply unstable. I can't fix it, Dr. Sterling. It's beyond my scope. Please. You have to help us." "Us, Aidan?" I asked quietly. "Or you?" He didn't have an answer. The day before the shareholder showdown was pure chaos for Innovate AI. 2 independent board members abruptly resigned, citing growing ethical concerns and lack of confidence in current leadership in their public statements. The privacy scandal exploded, with attorneys general from 3 different states announcing formal investigations into Innovate AI's data handling practices. And the final nail in the coffin, Global Finance Group officially terminated their multi-million-dollar contract, effective immediately. That afternoon, Ethan held a desperate, hastily arranged press conference. He looked like hell. Dark circles under his eyes, hair slightly askew, a noticeable tremor in his hands as he gripped the podium. "We take these allegations very seriously," he insisted, his voice lacking its usual confident ring. Reporters peppered him with skeptical questions. Any data collection issues were inadvertent, resulting from complex integration challenges. "We are implementing fixes immediately." He sounded defensive, evasive. When asked directly about the ongoing system failures and client departures, he once again deflected, mumbling about difficulties integrating certain legacy components, implicitly pointing the finger back at my work, my outdated methods. A reporter shouted from the back, "Mr. Cole, is it true your former CTO, David Sterling, the one you fired, is starting a competing company staffed primarily with your former senior employees?" Ethan's face tightened, a flicker of anger crossing his features. No comment on personnel matters. Then another question hit, harder. "Sources familiar with your decision-making claim you explicitly fired Dr. Sterling because of his age, calling him outdated. Do you have any response to the age discrimination allegations?" "Absolutely not." Ethan snapped, losing his composure for a moment. "That's preposterous. Innovate AI values diversity in all its forms." I watched the live stream from the Keystone Analytics conference room with my small, dedicated team. They booed and hissed at Ethan's blatant lies. I remained quiet, focused. Tomorrow. Later that night, Robert Chen called. "Just a heads up, David. Ethan's been frantically calling the other investors, the minority shareholders, trying to rally support. Has spinning a narrative that you're engineering a hostile takeover, trying to steal the company out of spite." I chuckled softly. "It's not hostile when you already own the place, Robert." "He doesn't know that yet," Robert reminded me, a smile in his voice. "He will tomorrow," I promised. Friday morning dawned crisp and clear. I chose my suit carefully, tailored navy blue, classic, powerful but understated. Today wasn't about flash or revenge in the theatrical sense. It was about restoring order, about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, about ensuring the technology I'd built wouldn't be ruined by arrogance and unethical shortcuts. It was about quiet, decisive justice. The shareholder meeting was held at Innovate AI headquarters, the building I had helped design, the halls I had walked for 3 years. As I pushed through the glass doors and crossed the familiar lobby, conversations stopped. Employees turned and stared. Some faces showed confusion, others a glimmer of hope. Word had clearly spread that something significant, something unusual, was about to happen. I walked into the main boardroom. Ethan Cole sat at the head of the long, polished table, flanked by 2 expensive-looking lawyers. His usual confident smirk was firmly in place, but it faltered just for a second when he saw me enter. He clearly hadn't expected me to show up in person. "Dr. Sterling," he said, recovering quickly, his tone laced with false surprise and a hint of condescension. "This is a closed meeting, for shareholders and their designated representatives only." "I'm well aware, Ethan," I replied calmly, taking an empty seat directly across the table from him, staring right back. "I'm here representing several major shareholders." His brow furrowed. Confusion flickered across his face before he masked it. The remaining board members, minority investors, and their legal advisors filed in, filling the room. Robert Chen caught my eye from his seat further down the table and gave a subtle, encouraging nod, hiding a smile. Ethan called the meeting to order, his voice artificially bright, trying to project control. "Well, we have a rather unusual item on the agenda today, called by a consortium of shareholders, a vote regarding leadership changes. Before we get to that formality, I want to assure everyone present that Innovate AI remains on solid footing fundamentally, despite some temporary market headwinds and technical adjustments." He launched into a rambling monologue about vision, resilience, weathering storms, the bright future ahead. I let him talk, let him dig his own grave deeper with optimistic pronouncements that everyone in the room knew were detached from the current reality. I waited patiently, my hands resting calmly on the table. When he finally paused, searching for a supportive glance that didn't quite materialize, I raised my hand slightly. "Ethan," I said, my voice quiet but carrying clearly in the tense room. "Before we proceed to any vote, I believe it's appropriate to identify for the record exactly which shareholders called this meeting." Ethan looked momentarily flustered. "Yes, well, it was a group of holding companies. Specifically, I interjected smoothly. This meeting was called by Apex Holdings, Summit Ventures, and the Sterling Family Trust. I let the names hang in the air for a beat. The room went utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Together, I continued, meeting Ethan's widening eyes. These 3 entities control 51% of Innovate AI's outstanding shares. Ethan laughed, a short, nervous bark. And you're representing these groups, David? Acting as their proxy?" "Not exactly," I replied. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a single-bound document, the master ownership summary prepared by Grace, and slid it deliberately across the polished table towards him. I own them. A collective gasp seemed to ripple through the room. Board members started murmuring, exchanging shocked looks. Ethan snatched the document, his knuckles white. His face drained of color as he scanned the first page, then flipped frantically through the appendices detailing the trust structures and beneficial ownership. From confused to pale to a deep, mottled red. This can't be right, he stammered, looking wildly around the room, seeking denial. You're saying, you own the majority of Innovate AI this whole time? I funded this company from the very beginning, Ethan, I explained, my voice remaining calm, addressing the entire room now, through those entities. The initial 8 million seed round, that was me. Subsequent bridge funding, also me. I chose deliberately to keep my investment role separate from my operational role as CTO. I wanted my technical contributions, our work together, to stand on its own merits, not be colored by the fact that I was also the primary financial backer. Michael Armstrong, one of the independent board members who hadn't resigned yet, a seasoned venture capitalist, looked genuinely astonished, then impressed. So you were the mystery investor all along? The one who wanted anonymity? I simply nodded. I believed in the vision then. I still believe in the potential of the core technology. But I added, my gaze locking back onto Ethan, I have lost all faith in the current leadership. Ethan's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently in his ear. Ethan violently shook his head, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. This is some kind of trick, a legal maneuver. You can't just walk in here and it's all perfectly legal, ethical, and documented, Mr. Cole. Grace Miller interjected smoothly, standing up from her seat beside me. Her team began efficiently distributing copies of the ownership documentation to everyone at the table. And now, Dr. Sterling, as the verified majority shareholder, would like to exercise his right to call the vote stipulated on the agenda. The vote itself was almost an anticlimax. My 51% alone was enough to seal Ethan's fate. But I wanted more than just a technical victory. I wanted the board's explicit condemnation of his actions. So before the formal vote, I had Grace briefly present the compiled evidence, the timeline of mismanagement, the stock collapse, the client losses, the internal communications proving the age discrimination, and the reckless plans for privacy violations that had triggered regulatory investigations. When the vote was called, I cast my 51% against Ethan remaining as CEO. Then Robert Chen voted against him. Michael Armstrong, after studying the evidence, also voted against him. One other minority investor followed suit. It was an overwhelming rejection. Ethan sat there, stunned into silence, as the company secretary formally recorded the vote tally. Effective immediately, I announced into the quiet room, Ethan Cole is removed from the position of Chief Executive Officer and board member of Innovate AI. He finally found his voice, raw with fury. He sprang to his feet, pointing a shaking finger across the table at me. You planned this, all of it, from the beginning. You sabotaged the system after I fired you. That's why it failed. I didn't sabotage anything, Ethan, I replied, my voice devoid of heat. I built that system. Every core component, every line of critical code. The fact that you and your hand-picked replacement couldn't even maintain it, let alone improve it without breaking it, well, that speaks volumes about competence, doesn't it? The air in the room grew thick with uncomfortable silence. Ethan, sputtering, visibly shaking with rage, gathered his papers haphazardly, knocking over a glass of water in his haste. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, he snarled as he stormed towards the door. I look forward to it, I called after his retreating back. I have extensive documentation regarding your comments about my age and your rationale for my dismissal. Discovery should be illuminating. After the door slammed shut behind him, the remaining board members turned to me, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and expectation on their faces. Michael Armstrong broke the silence. So Dr. Sterling, David, what now? Are you planning to step back in as CEO? I allowed myself a small smile. Actually, Michael, I have a different proposal entirely. Taking over as CEO of Innovate AI wasn't my goal. My passion, my focus, was now on Keystone Analytics, the company we were building from the ground up, ethically, with a team grounded in experience. What I wanted from Innovate AI now was twofold: justice for what had happened and a strategic business opportunity. I announced, addressing the remaining board, a merger between Innovate AI and Keystone Analytics. Eyebrows shot up around the table. Keystone, I continued, has already developed stable, enhanced solutions addressing the exact technical and privacy issues currently plaguing Innovate AI's platform. Our team comprises many of the key architects and engineers who originally built Innovate AI's core systems. By merging, we can immediately stabilize the technology, restore client confidence, retain the best talent from both companies, and leverage Innovate AI's existing infrastructure and market presence. The board members listened intently as I laid out the strategic rationale, the financial projections, the plan for rapid integration and remediation. And the surviving company name? Robert Chen asked, though he likely already knew my answer. Keystone Analytics, I stated firmly. Innovate AI's brand reputation has been significantly damaged by recent events. We need a fresh start under a banner that explicitly values experience and ethical practices. Michael Armstrong looked skeptical. David, with all due respect, this sounds a bit like you're using your newfound majority stake to orchestrate a takeover that benefits your own new company. Michael, I countered calmly, am using my majority stake to salvage the valuable technology and preserve the hundreds of jobs that Innovate AI, under its current trajectory, would likely lose entirely within months. The company's market value has plummeted 60% in less than 2 months. This merger isn't just an option. It's the best option for all remaining shareholders, employees, and clients. We spent the next 2 hours hashing out the details, debating valuations, discussing leadership structures for the combined entity. Grace and my finance lead fielded the technical questions. In the end, the logic was inescapable. The board voted unanimously to approve the merger in principle, pending due diligence and final shareholder ratification, which, with my 51%, was now a formality. As the meeting adjourned, Michael Armstrong approached me privately. That was impressive, David, he admitted, shaking his head slightly. Brutal, perhaps, but strategically brilliant. I met his gaze. Sometimes, Michael, I said quietly, experience gives you an edge that youthful arrogance simply can't anticipate. News of Ethan Cole's ouster and the pending merger with Keystone Analytics hit the wires almost immediately. Innovate AI stock, soon to be Keystone Analytics stock, jumped 12% by the market close, its first significant positive movement in weeks. The tech blogs and financial press went into overdrive, speculating about the real story behind the dramatic turnaround. I returned to the bustling Keystone Analytics office, which suddenly felt like the nerve center of a much larger operation. I gathered my small, core team, the over 40 engineers and designers who had taken a chance on me. When I told them the news, that Innovate AI's board had removed Ethan and approved our merger proposal, the room erupted in cheers and applause. We're not just merging two companies, I told them, feeling a surge of pride not just in the victory but in the people around me. We're building something fundamentally better, something stronger and more ethical than either company could have been alone. And perhaps more importantly, we're proving decisively that experience isn't a liability, it's our greatest asset. While we had a modest celebration with pizza and sparkling cider, my phone buzzed. A text message from Laura Finch, the HR director who had called me in desperation just days before. FYI, Aiden Hayes just quit, cleaned out his desk, didn't say a word to anyone, just left. I wasn't surprised. Being the young replacement who couldn't handle the job, caught in the middle of a power struggle he didn't understand, it must have been an untenable position. In a way, I felt a sliver of sympathy for him. He was ambitious, yes, but ultimately, he'd been a pawn in Ethan's ill-conceived game. That evening, I agreed to an exclusive interview with TechCrunch, one of the most respected industry publications. The reporter asked pointed but fair questions about the merger, Ethan's removal, the technical problems. I answered transparently, focusing on the future, on stabilizing the platform, on protecting jobs, and on the ethical framework guiding Keystone Analytics. Then came the inevitable personal questions. Dr. Sterling, you were very publicly fired from Innovate AI, with the CEO explicitly citing your age as a factor. Do you feel vindicated now, orchestrating this return? I chose my words carefully, leaning into the microphone. Vindication isn't the right word. What I feel is a confirmation that merit, capability, and integrity should determine a person's value in any industry, not their date of birth. Silicon Valley, frankly, has a pervasive ageism problem, and it costs companies dearly in lost talent and experience every single day. What happened at Innovate AI is a stark example of that. What would you say to Ethan Cole now if you could? The reporter pressed. I allowed a small, wry smile. I'd say that underestimating people, particularly people with decades of experience, is a remarkably dangerous and costly business strategy. The week that followed was a whirlwind. Legal teams worked furiously to finalize the merger paperwork. Our engineering teams, a blend of Keystone originals and the best engineers remaining at Innovate AI, began the complex but crucial task of integrating systems and deploying the stable code fixes we had already developed at Keystone. I found myself splitting my time, diving back into the technical weeds to oversee the platform stabilization while also guiding Keystone's ongoing product development roadmap. We proactively reached out to former Innovate AI clients, especially Global Finance Group. We explained the leadership change, detailed the technical improvements being implemented, and emphasized our renewed commitment to data privacy and ethical AI practices. Many expressed cautious optimism, indicating they'd be willing to reconsider once the platform demonstrated sustained stability. Ethan Cole, meanwhile, had gone completely silent. No lawsuit materialized. Grace suspected his lawyers had likely advised him against it, given the mountain of evidence we possessed regarding the age discrimination and his mismanagement. The state attorney's general investigations into the privacy issues continued, but we were cooperating fully, providing documentation of the problems inherited and the immediate corrective actions being taken under the new Keystone Analytics banner. One Wednesday morning, about 3 weeks after the merger announcement, Ben Carter and I were deep in a code review session in the main conference room, my old office, ironically, now designated as Keystone's primary strategy hub. Suddenly, Maria Sanchez burst in, holding up her tablet. "You need to see this," she said, pulling up a tech news site. The headline blared, "Exclusive, ousted Innovate AI CEO Ethan Cole launching new AI venture, Momentum AI." The article detailed Ethan's ambitious plans to launch a competing AI platform, promising revolutionary features and rapid deployment. And guess who he had recruited as his CTO? Aiden Hayes. "They're claiming they'll have a viable product on the market in 3 months," Maria said, disbelief clear in her voice. "That's impossible. Unless they're planning to somehow steal our foundational code." I scanned the article quickly, my eyes landing on a quote attributed to Ethan. "Momentum AI won't be held back by outdated thinking or legacy approaches. We're building for tomorrow, not yesterday." I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud, a genuine, unrestrained laugh. He still didn't get it. He thought catchy slogans and youthful energy could substitute for deep architectural understanding and rigorous development discipline. Ben looked worried. "Should we be concerned, David, about the competition? Intellectual property theft?" "Let them try, Ben," I said confidently, closing the news article. "Building what we've built, what you helped build, takes far more than flashy presentations and empty promises. It takes time, discipline, and frankly, experience. Let Ethan chase his momentum. We'll focus on delivering stability, value, and trust." The official completion of the merger was met with a positive market reaction. Keystone Analytics stock, formerly Innovate AI, began a steady climb as we transparently shared our technical remediation progress and our roadmap for future enhancements. 1 month after taking the reins, we invited key clients, including the skeptical executives from Global Finance Group, to our headquarters for a live demonstration of the newly stabilized and enhanced platform. The system performed flawlessly. We showcased improved performance metrics, a more intuitive user interface, and most importantly, robust, multi-layered privacy safeguards built into the core. Before the end of the day, Global Finance Group had signed a new, expanded 3-year contract with Keystone Analytics. Other clients quickly followed suit. After the clients had departed, celebrating the renewed partnerships, I found myself wandering back towards my office, the same corner office Ethan had occupied. The same office I'd been escorted out of just months before. The view of the city skyline felt familiar, yet different. My nameplate was now on the door: David Sterling, Chief Technology Officer and Founder, Keystone Analytics. Robert Chen knocked softly and entered, holding a folded newspaper. Thought you might want to see this, he said, handing it to me. It was the business section. An analyst's report cast serious doubt on Momentum AI's prospects, citing Ethan Cole's tarnished reputation following the Innovate AI collapse and the difficulty he was apparently facing in recruiting top-tier AI talent. Has struggling to hire anyone with serious AI experience, Robert added, confirming the article's gist. Word has definitely spread about how he treated you, how he dismissed the senior engineers. People talk, David. I set the paper aside. Strangely, I felt no surge of triumph, no desire for Ethan's complete ruin. I don't wish him failure, Robert, I said honestly. I just want our industry to learn the right lessons from this, to value substance over hype, experience over mere youth. Robert nodded thoughtfully. Speaking of experience, HR tells me we've received over 200 applications from highly qualified engineers, all over the age of 40, since your TechCrunch interview went viral. A genuine smile spread across my face. Excellent. Let's start interviewing. Hire the best ones. 6 months after the merger, Keystone Analytics hosted its first industry conference, focused entirely on ethical AI development and responsible innovation. I gave the keynote address to a packed auditorium. I spoke about privacy by design, about algorithmic accountability, and about the critical importance of diverse perspectives, explicitly including age diversity, in building technology that serves humanity well. The next true breakthrough in AI, I told the captivated audience, won't come solely from chasing the newest, youngest minds. It will come from the powerful synergy of fresh ideas combined with wisdom, critical thinking honed over decades, and the ethical grounding that often comes with experience. The applause was sustained, thunderous. Afterwards, a long line of attendees formed, eager to speak with me. Young developers seeking advice, seasoned engineers expressing gratitude for the message of inclusion, venture capitalists intrigued by our success and our philosophy. Standing towards the back of the line, looking hesitant, was a familiar face, Aiden Hayes. He waited patiently until the crowd thinned. Dr. Sterling, he said when he finally reached me, his voice quiet, nervous. I owe you an apology. For what specifically, Aiden? I asked, keeping my tone neutral but open. He swallowed hard, meeting my eyes. For taking your position like that. For believing Ethan's narrative. For thinking I could just step in and handle it. And mostly his voice dropped lower. For not speaking up when Ethan made those comments about your age on stage. I knew it was wrong. I just stayed silent. I studied him for a moment. The arrogance was gone, replaced by what seemed like genuine remorse, perhaps some hard-won humility. What happened with Momentum AI? I asked gently, though industry reports had already confirmed its failure to secure significant funding or attract key talent. It's gone, he admitted, looking down briefly. Folded last month. Ethan couldn't deliver on his promises. The investors backed out. And honestly, I realized I couldn't build what you had built. Not even close. I nodded slowly, understanding the unspoken question hanging in the air. Send your resume to Laura in HR, Aiden, I said. I can't promise anything, obviously. We have rigorous hiring standards, but Keystone is always looking for talent, especially talent that has learned valuable lessons from past mistakes. He looked up, surprised, a flicker of hope in his eyes. 1 year to the day after my public firing, Keystone Analytics was thriving. We were recognized as one of the fastest growing and most respected companies in the AI sector. Our market valuation had tripled since the merger. The state investigations into Innovate AI's past data practices had concluded with minimal fines, largely due to our swift, transparent corrective actions and new ethical protocols. Ethan Cole had largely vanished from the tech scene after Momentum AI imploded. The last I heard through the grapevine, he was working as a mid-level manager for a small software development shop in another state. Aiden Hayes, to his credit, had passed our interviews and joined Keystone as a senior engineer, not in a leadership role. He worked hard, learned eagerly from the experienced engineers around him, and seemed genuinely grateful for the second chance. Sometimes, I reflected, potential just needs the right guidance, the right environment, rather than being thrown into the deep end too soon. My assistant brought me a plain white envelope one afternoon. This just arrived by courier, Mr. Sterling. Hand-delivered. Inside, on a simple sheet of paper, was a brief, handwritten note. Sterling, you won. I was wrong, I'm sorry. There was no signature, but I recognized Ethan's sharp, angular handwriting immediately. I folded the note slowly and tucked it into my jacket pocket. I didn't feel triumphant, nor particularly bitter, just a sense of closure, an acknowledgement, however brief, of the truth. "Are you ready for the quarterly board meeting, sir?" my assistant asked, poking her head back in. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Yes. Time to talk about the future. The board meeting focused on our next phase of growth. We were launching the Keystone Center for AI Ethics and Accessibility, a multi-million-dollar research initiative dedicated to ensuring artificial intelligence develops in ways that benefit people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities. "We've earmarked $20 million for the initial phase," I explained to the enthusiastic board, "and we're establishing partnerships with several universities to create fellowship programs specifically designed for mid-career professionals looking to transition into the tech industry, addressing the age barrier head-on." The initiative was approved unanimously. After the meeting, Robert Chen pulled me aside, a grin on his face. "Tech World magazine wants to feature you on their cover for their annual Innovators Redefining Tech issue," he said. "They specifically mentioned your vocal stance against ageism and Keystone's success with an experience-driven culture." I hesitated. Despite everything, I still preferred the work itself over the publicity. "David," Robert said gently, sensing my reluctance, "this isn't just about you anymore. You've inadvertently become a symbol, a voice for countless talented people who felt sidelined or pushed out simply because of their age. Your story, Keystone's story, it matters." I thought about the engineers we'd hired, the messages I'd received, the quiet shift I hoped we were starting. "All right, Robert," I decided. "Tell them we'll do it." The resulting cover story, titled "The Keystone Effect: How Experience is Disrupting Tech's Youth Obsession," generated significant buzz. It sparked conversations in boardrooms and coffee shops across Silicon Valley and beyond. Our approach, once seen as contrarian, was increasingly being recognized not just as viable, but as a competitive advantage. When a follow-up interviewer asked if I felt Keystone Analytics had genuinely disrupted the prevailing culture, I answered honestly, "I certainly hope we're contributing to a necessary evolution." Any industry, any culture that reflexively dismisses wisdom while relentlessly chasing only youth is fundamentally limiting its own potential for true innovation and lasting success. 2 years after the merger, almost 3 years to the day after that humiliating conference, I stood on the very same stage at the annual Tech Vision conference. This time I wasn't lurking in the wings. I had been invited to deliver the closing keynote address. The irony was thick enough to taste, and it wasn't lost on me, or likely on many in the audience who remembered that day. I stepped up to the podium, the lights feeling warm this time, not harsh. I looked out at the sea of faces. 3 years ago, I began, my voice steady and clear, amplified through the hall. On this very stage, I was effectively told I was too old, too outdated, to keep pace with innovation in our rapidly changing industry. A low murmur went through the crowd. Today, I continued, I stand before you as the founder and chairperson of Keystone Analytics, a company valued at over $4 billion, built on the principle that experience is not a barrier, but a powerful catalyst. We are building technology that our competitors are still trying to replicate. Applause rippled through the auditorium. I went on, not dwelling on the past, but outlining Keystone's success, our growth metrics, our client retention, our industry-leading ethical standards, and crucially, the incredible contributions of our diverse team, ranging in age from recent graduates in their early 20s to brilliant principal engineers in their 60s. The data, the results, spoke for themselves. When we talk about disruption in technology, I concluded, we usually mean a new product, a new service, a new market. But I believe the most important, most necessary disruption happening right now is the disruption of outdated biases, the disruption of how we value human potential, human experience, human wisdom. After the speech, as I walked off stage to another round of applause, a young developer, maybe 25, approached me, his eyes shining. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "that was incredible. Thank you." For the first time, I'm actually not afraid of getting older in this industry. His words stayed with me long after the conference ended. That fear, the fear of aging out, of becoming irrelevant, was so deeply ingrained in the tech psyche that even the youngest lived under its shadow. Maybe, just maybe, we weren't just building better AI. Maybe we were helping to build a better, more sustainable, more human future for everyone working in technology. 5 years. 5 years have passed since that awful day under the spotlights. Today, I stand looking out the window of my office, now as chairperson of the board, at the expanded Keystone Analytics campus. We have over 1,000 employees, offices in 4 countries. Our AI platforms are consistently ranked best in class, not just for performance, but for their ethical design and transparent operation. Down below, I see Aiden Hayes, now a respected development lead, giving a tour to a group of new hires, a mix of fresh-faced graduates and experienced engineers joining us mid-career. He caught my eye and gave a slight, respectful nod. The journey had changed him too. My phone buzzes with a news alert. Another major tech company has just announced a significant new initiative focused on recruiting and retaining experienced, age-diverse talent. Small victories, perhaps, but they add up. The culture is shifting, slowly but surely. A young intern, maybe 20, pauses hesitantly at my open door. "Mr. Sterling, sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" I ask, turning with a smile. "My mom," she says, her voice earnest. "She's an amazing software architect. She got pushed out of her last job at 44, said she felt invisible. But she saw your cover story, heard about Keystone. She applied, and she starts here next month. You gave her hope back, so thank you." I nod, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Tell your mom we're lucky to have her." She beams and hurries off. I turn back to the window. It wasn't about revenge, not really. Not in the end. It was about resilience, about proving that integrity and experience aren't weaknesses to be discarded, but strengths to be harnessed. It was about building something better, something lasting, something that reflects the values I believe in. The quietest, most effective way to answer betrayal is often just to build a future they never thought possible. That's my story, a journey through unexpected betrayal, yes, but ultimately one of rediscovery and rebuilding. It taught me that true strength isn't about never falling, but about how you rise. It's about holding on to your dignity, trusting your own worth even when others try to diminish it, and realizing that sometimes the best revenge is simply creating something positive and successful out of the ashes. It's about finding justice, not through destruction, but through creation and unwavering faith in your own capabilities. What are your thoughts on navigating betrayal or setbacks in your own life? How have you found strength in difficult times? Share your reflections in the comments below. Reading your stories helps us all heal and learn. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to TK Revenge Story for more real-life accounts of resilience and redemption. And if you feel moved to support our storytelling, you can use the Super Thanks feature below. Giving, in any form, can be a powerful part of the healing process for everyone involved. Thank you for listening.